So I'm Sudhir Senthil Kumar. I hail from Tamil Nadu, India. I currently work as an intern at Cisco Systems, and then I'm going to be joining in as a software engineer very soon at Cisco. So let's get started. The agenda for today is that we'll be getting started with the front end aspects of full stack web development, which is the bread and butter to get started, okay, to see what you are building in real. Okay, so it's something that you can build tangible things with and then share with your friends and then show it to people around. So that is comprised of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, where we'll be starting. For today, we'll be focusing on HTML and CSS. We'll take care of JavaScript later, that is tomorrow, in the 1.5 hour counterpart of tomorrow at the same time. Sounds good. Anybody have any doubt for the moment? Okay, I'm not hearing anything, so I think it's a go. Let me just get started by sharing my screen now. And I'd like to show what we'll be building today. So you kind of know, you are informed about by the end of this session, what you will be able to build. I hope you can see my screen now. Can I have a heads up? Awesome. Cool. So this is what you'll be building. It's a very simple thing. I've tried to factor in as many concepts as possible to make it as developer friendly. Now you are all developers here, so I'd like to make it developer friendly. So what you see here is a very small greetings forum app. Okay. So you will be able to greet your friends. Let's say you have a party planned, or if there's a host that's planning a party or a marriage function or whatsoever. Let's say that you want to build an app for them so that people, the visitors of the party, can throw their wishes in, and then that's public to people there. It's like an app that you build for your people. Okay. So what we have here is a small form which will ask you for your name. Let's say Sudai, and a greeting message. Let's say, wish you a happy birthday. And when you say submit, that comes there. For the moment, since it's basically a front-end workshop, this particular functionality isn't persistent. That is, when you come back and refresh this page, the things are gone. What we'll be seeing tomorrow is the introduction of backend. This is where backend comes in, and then whatever you just did here will persist over time. So whoever opens your app on their particular phones or mobile phones or laptops, they'll be able to see these wishes remaining in their place. Okay. So this is what we'll be building, and let's get started. So people that want to code along with me, you can get started. I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code here. So if you see that as a good tool for yourself, you can also join along and start coding. All right. And there's one more thing that I'd like to pitch here. So you have to know what the long-term goal might look like. We are starting with normal front-end basics of web development today, and we'll be seeing a bit of backend tomorrow. But down the line, what will you be able to build? I'd like to show a glimpse of that as well. So you know the real potential of what you're learning today and tomorrow. Okay. If you see VS Code here, you see this thing called extensions. It's basically like a Play Store, Google Play Store, but from Microsoft's VS Code. If you go and type JetSet for VS Code, you'll see an extension here. This is nothing but an extension that I built. It's a first of its kind extension that I built using entirely using web development concepts. So this is like the potential that this particular concept of web development, this particular game of web development has. Okay. Now, if kept the first step of getting started in learning web development, we'll get started with this, and down the line, probably with a few months practice, you'll be able to build extensions for VS Code and publish it out to people. So this extension basically is for transferring files between people that use VS Code. Okay. So I just found it interesting, and then I just wanted to show what is possible today from what you learned today. Okay. Let's get started with a brief concept about what HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are. So let's have an analogy of the human body here. Okay. The human body contains of the skin on the outermost part, which people see. Then underneath that comes the muscles and the muscular structures, which give a bit of functionality. And at the core, there are bones, which is the skeleton. Exactly like that, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are three very integral, I must say, components of what makes a front-end web developer. Where HTML is is analogous to the skeleton that I was talking to you about. It gives structure to your website. Okay. The second thing, maybe I can type it as I read so it doesn't sound monotonous. Okay. So HTML here, which stands for hypertext markup language. It's not a programming language, basically. It's a markup language. What markup languages are? Markup languages basically are a way for you to tell the computer what you'd like to see in it. Okay, that's it. But JavaScript rather is a programming language which needs an interpreter or a compiler that goes through it and then performs certain activities for you. Perform something. It gives you it takes an input and then gives you an output. Something like that will happen in an interactive fashion, like Python, C++, etc. But HTML on the other side, HTML lets you to just specify a certain set of rules. These rules are what makes a website, okay? Make a website look like what it is. It's like building a house with bricks. Once you do it, it's just there, and then you start adding these glamorous elements to it, like the interior, artwork, furnitures, and all that. So HTML is analogous to the bones in your body. Next comes CSS. CSS will basically it would act like, I must say, your skin, the outermost thing that people see. Okay, that's why all the cosmetics that we use and all the perfumes and all that's being applied over the skin, right? But that's your entry point to the body. So what you do to beautify yourself happens over the skin. So that's like CSS. CSS is used. It stands for cascading style sheets, which is basically another CSS is another method for you to now that you've built a structure using HTML. Now you have to beautify it, arrange the things around, give a set pattern to the things that are laid out in your website. That happens using CSS. So that is called cascading style sheets, abbreviated for CSS. All right. Moving on, we have JavaScript as the last concept of the three basic things that build what a front developer is. JavaScript here, as I told you, is a programming language, unlike CSS and unlike HTML, basically, which is a markup language. JavaScript is used to tell, now you have these elements on your website, you've beautified them, you've given them structure, you've told them where each of those elements have to go sit in the particular website that you've built. They're just there. They're like static assets. They don't do anything as such. If you saw the website that I just showed you, what you'll be able to build by this evening or probably by tomorrow, there was a functionality. You saw a button, you saw a few text fields. If I fill in the things in the text field, and then hit a button, it performs an action that I told it to do, which is make a card, a good looking dark themed card, and then add it to the the greetings, the list of greetings that was present to the right hand side. So that's what JavaScript helps you do. Yeah. Okay. I think so. It's basically like giving functionality to your website. Cool. So that's the concept that I wanted to tell. Sorry. Before we got to the actual coding part, HTML is analogous to bones, which gives structure to your website. CSS is the beautification aspects, what the color should look like, what your style should be, what your alignment should be. All that comes from CSS. And finally comes JavaScript, which tells you how the functionality of the website should be. What should your website do? That because every website has a goal, right? There was a time when Wikipedia was the big. It still is the case. Wikipedia is still the biggest encyclopedia, but the problem is it's just the encyclopedia. It just delivers content one way. It's like one person talking, and there's really not much interactivity on Wikipedia. You go to Wikipedia, you see a certain set of things, and then you're done. It solves its purpose. But let's say you go to Facebook, or let's say you go to Instagram. Instagram's website lets you do a whole bunch of things like posting new posts, pictures, commenting on others' pictures that are posted, sending DMs to your friends, forth and back, etc. So this allows bidirectional functionality. It's like you talking to the website back. Website's talking to you, that's one thing. You are also now talking back to the website. You're telling it what to do. All that's happening using JavaScript. Okay. If that sounds good, let's start coding now. Are we good? Can I have, okay, do we have reactions in here? Yes. Can we have in reactions? Okay. Jaspreet Singh has raised his hand. Do you have any doubt? Or is it the reaction that you want to put? Awesome. We have reactions flowing in. Cool, then let's get started. So again, telling if you want to code along, if you want to see the output grow on your computer as well, make a folder on your website, have VS Code. If you have VS Code, you can have it open, or even a normal notepad should be fine. Okay, I prefer VS Code because it's, it gives a proper structure, it gives a proper colored pattern to all that you type in it. Okay, let me get rid of this file so we have a blank slate to start with. Starting off, you need to create your first file. As I told you, we start like inwards out. So what we do from inside out, what we do is that we start with the structure, the core part, telling how your website should look like. That happens with a file called index.html. Index is basically, you can name it anything, but I'm naming it index here because browsers know this name. It's a quite famous name for, and every website needs an entry point, right? Every page, every website has a home page. And the home page is generally named as index.html because browsers know that best. Automatically, browsers will search once you host it on, because now we are just developing things on our computer here. But down the line, you'll be hosting it somewhere for the world to see. In such a case, this file will live on a server, and index.html, when it's named index.html, the browsers will be able to look at this particular file and automatically take it and serve it to the rest of the world that would like to see your website and make use of it. So we'll call it index.html. And so there's a certain syntax to HTML here. Okay. The first line basically is this, the one that I'm typing here, doc type HTML. This just tells your browser that the file it's dealing with is a HTML file. All right. So that's the first line. And then in HTML, basically, there are two concepts. There's this concept of tags. Okay, it's a tag-based system. Tags can have a whole lot of, whole array of names, and each of this has its own meaning. So VS Code's advantage is that if you start a tag using this opening angular bracket, tell you, looking at the HTML extension of the file, it will tell you what it is, what can be possible things that you can type here. These are the various tags that are available on HTML, and HTML files basically start with you guessed it, right? The HTML tag itself. Okay. And automatically there's a closing tag also coming in. So in HTML, first point is everything is tag based, where the one that I've highlighted now is called a tag. Okay. It's the HTML tag. There are so many other tags like the H1 tag, the A tag, the audio tag, the video tag. All these are various tags. Each tag has its own purpose into laying that structure, the core structure of your website. So the entire thing will be wrapped using the HTML tag, and every opening tag will have a closing corresponding closing tag, and that will be denoted by this small slash that you have. It's the same tag basically, but it just starts with a slash here at the angular bracket slash and the closing tag. This is the most common syntax that you'll see throughout, but there are also these things called self-closing tags. For example, let's say you've typed out a word here, a sentence here, and then you've typed another sentence back here. But if you would like to, if I have to show the output to you, it would look like that. Okay. You see everything is on one line. Though you've typed it in two lines, okay, though you have it typed here on two lines, what it will look like is that it'll appear to be what HTML will understand. HTML's parser will understand it as one particular line because you haven't told anything in between. It's just a bunch of spaces that it doesn't care about. So there are self-closing tags like the break tag. Okay, it is denoted by this particular syntax where the slash comes after the keyword. Here you saw in a self-closing tag, the slash comes after this word, the tag's name. In a closing tag, like the HTML tag itself, it comes before the tag's name. This is the only difference. Okay, just two types of tags: self-closing tag and a closing tag with every corresponding opening tag. Okay, right. Now, if you see the output, if I can refresh that for you, see, now it exactly knows what's supposed to be done, because you've told it very clearly on your HTML file, saying that I want this line, I want a break, and then I want the second line to be printed. That's the rule that you're telling. This is what HTML helps you to do. Okay, let's start by typing the HTML tag. Let's go into it. What we've done is that we've now come into the context of the HTML tag. Whatever you type here is wrapped by these HTML tags. That's what's happening. Now what we are going to be doing is we will open the head tag. So there's a tag called head. There's a tag called the body. Head is basically the information that you want your website to tell the visitor's browser, because visitors' browsers have a whole array of features in it. Okay. For instance, I'll open this on Chrome for better experience, right? Let's go here. Yeah. Yep. So if you noticed, okay, let's come to Google Meet here. So Google is demonstrating me typing the title tag. I have an opening title tag within the head tags and a closing title tag, in between which I've told what the app's name is. I'm going to be naming it My Greetings app, but you are free to name it whatever you want. And immediately, if I come back and refresh the page that I had here, look at what happened. All the gibberish is gone. We have proper information that I want to tell the browser, which is My Greetings app. That's what the title tag does. Okay. Now let's get on to the second step, where we will change this default picture. Let's give it a proper picture now. For that purpose, I have a bunch of images here copied. I will copy those things into my workspace here. Okay. Assets. I'm having a background. This is the background that I've used in the output that you saw. We'll be using that. And this is called a fave icon. Okay. The fave icon is the image. It's basically a generic term used for that particular small little picture that you saw on the tab, like the one that you see here, or like the one that you see on Google Meets thing here, the particular handy cam or the video camera logo that you saw. So we are seeing the default picture for now. Now our website should be displaying this. How do we do that? We come back into the head tag and we use this little link tag now. And link here is a self-closing tag. Okay. Within the link tag, okay, now just make a note of where I'm typing this information. So I'm going to be typing a few things called attributes. I'm going to tell what this link tag should do. Here in the title tag, what I've told is, okay, I have a title tag, an opening and a closing tag. And between that, I'm typing a few set of information, and that information is supposed to be shown on the top of my tab. That's what happened there. But now I'm doing a slightly different thing. It's convention. The link tag accepts these things called attributes. Okay, attributes are basically properties that you lay out for that particular instance of the tag. So we have the link tag here. You can have multiple tags of the same name used. Okay, I can have a bunch of link tags here, and then each link tag will be doing a different set of things. But here I have just one link tag for the moment, and I'm going to tell what it should do. For that, I'm using the rel attribute, the rel attribute. Every attribute will have like a convention like this: the name of the attribute, followed by an equal to sign, followed by some information in quotes. That's what will tell what that attribute was mentioned in the first place for. Okay. So for the link tag, we have the rel attribute and the href attribute. Okay. The rel attribute is to tell you what this link tag is here to do. And here the link tag is going to put my fave icon there. So that is called link link rel equal to icon. So I'm going to be telling what my fav icon should be. In the href is basically the reference where, okay, now you've told this link tag should configure that small little icon on the top of your tab. Now the href is here to tell, okay, you want an icon there, but where is that icon sitting? Where should I take the icon from? That's a question. For that, you'll be using the href tag, href attribute. Okay. So the link here is called a tag. These things, rel, hrefs, these are called attributes. Okay. The href attribute will be telling where I should take the icon from. You know where it is. It's in my assets folder, and I called it favicon.png. Done. Save this file. Go back to your app. Done. We have a professional looking tab thing. It's like a cosmetic change that we did, but then from a perspective of a new person, it will look like you built something fruitful. It's not showing random information now. It's all customized data. That default image is gone, and now it's showing what it was supposed to show in the first place, the thumbs up icon. All good? Any doubts so far?
Sir, can you explain what is rel again?
Can you come again? The rel attribute?
Yes, sir.
Okay, the rel attribute is basically to tell what this link tag should do. I told you that you can have multiple link tags, but each link tag will have its own purpose. And the rel attribute is to tell what that particular link tag should do. I want to tell that this particular link tag on line number 6 is to set the fav icon. That's what it's like relation. You can tell it's rel probably stands for relation. I'm not sure about that. You can make a research, but it's to tell what this link tag is supposed to do. Did that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. In the next line, I'm going to use another link tag. Again, the same syntax and a closing tag. Okay. Now I'm using a second link tag, same syntax, but now I'm going to use it for a different reason. Now I told you, right? Style sheets. Next, we are going to be touching a little bit of CSS. CSS is basically defined in another file. Okay. It can also be written, all that I write in a CSS file can also be written within the head tag itself using the style tag. Okay. You can nest everything here, but instead what we are going to do is to make our code a little bit more beautiful, we will create a new file here called style.css. Okay. And in the index.html, I will tell go take your styles, go take your CSS information from that CSS file. Instead of me writing it all here, I am telling it to live in a separate file and I'm linking that file to the HTML file. Does that make sense? I hope it does, right? Let's discuss if there are any questions, after a few moments. Let's make some progress here and then let's take some questions up. So here I'm going to tell the relation in the 6th line was icon. I wanted to set the fav icon. But here I'm going to load a style sheet. And as you guessed, the relation here is style sheet. I'm going to tell, I want you to load a style sheet from this link. And where's that link? It's in the same folder, style.css. Done. Okay. But you won't see any visible change for the moment because I haven't mentioned the CSS rules over here. So we will be seeing it very shortly. But what we've done now is that we've linked this particular CSS file to our HTML file. That's it. Just give me one small minute. I'll be right back. So style sheet has been loaded from style.css. Moving on, we'll start building our body tag. This is for the actual visitor of your website to see. What I want to do here is that, let me show you the output first. So, I can discuss it better with you with the actual output itself. Give me one moment. Yeah, right. So this is the output of the website that you're going to be building today. Let's just fill something up here. Okay, yeah. So here we have various elements here. The elements that I was talking to you about is, first is the entire screen. Entire screen makes one element. Then if you see this particular, if you can see my cursor, the thing that you see to the left is an element, which is a form for you to tell information, your name and your greeting message. So this is, I've split this particular website into two halves. The left-hand side half will have the form where you'll be inputting data and where you'll be putting data into. On the right-hand side, you will have the greetings being lined up as cards. Okay. So we've split this page into two elements first. Two at higher order, we have two elements. And inside the first element, the left-hand side element, you have another element, which is the form. And inside that form, you have again multiple elements where you have the name, the particular banner that says your name, the input box that says enter name, the banner that says your greeting message, the greeting box, the box that says enter greeting message, finally the submit button. Okay. And finally, on the right hand side, you have sub elements under that particular thing where you have the word greetings up here. Then you have these cards, which are which are elements of their own. They get lined up one below the other. Sounds good. So these are elements. Now we have a blank slate to start with. So we'll be telling what our structure should look like. For the moment, just don't care about how it looks, the aesthetics and all that. Don't be bothered about that. We are just going to be talking from an element perspective. So what I told you first, this page is being segmented into two segments, two halves, each making an element. And inside each half, we have separate elements where the left-hand side half takes care of the form, the right-hand side half takes care of the greetings that are being added onto the form. So we need to build that now. And how do we do that? For that, we usually use this tag called the div tag. Okay, it's again a tag that opens and closes. So basically, as web developers, what you should do is you need to think in form of what elements you see. Actually, if you talk at a higher level, the VS Code instance that we are using itself, the Visual Studio Code software itself, is basically written using HTML under the hood. If you see the core code of the Visual Studio Code, you'll see a bunch of HTML elements over there as well. So the elements here are, one is the side pane that you see that says search, source control, remote explorer extensions, jet set for VS Code, all that's being done in the pane. So that's one element. It looks beautiful. We can customize the beauty later on, but then we need to be able to identify what the elements that are present in the website in the first place are. And that is being told by the div tag. So each element that you've identified will be characterized by the div tag. So first, I'm using one div tag for the background, okay? Because I want the background to be its own element. You can also set the background for the entire body. Let's say, okay, I'm just typing some CSS here. I'll explain it to you later on, but I'll tell you what is possible using CSS. Let's say I identified the word body. So everything that comes inside body will have background color as red. If I save this and go to my output, look at what I see. That's what CSS does. It identified the entire body for you and it applied the rule that I told, apply background color as red. That's what happened. So the syntax is for CSS. Now we are slowly getting into CSS. The CSS syntax starts with an identifier. Okay. Here I'm telling what should take the style, which element of the particular website that you have built or you've been building must carry that particular style forward. So here the selector that I've used, the identifier that I've used is body. If I hover over that, it's telling me it's for the body tag. For the body tag, it's going to be applying every rule that I mentioned here. So I can mention various rules here, font, family, as something. I can mention what else? If you want, I can have a background image. So background image can be used here itself. but I rather prefer background image to live in a tag of its own. So tomorrow, if I don't want that image, I'll simply just take this tag down and that image will be gone. Okay, so I'll first identify the elements. I'll lay them down. That's what we'll be doing. So first is this background, which we already did using the div tag. Second thing is this main content. So on that slate, I have the main content, which is the form and the greetings pane that is displaying the data. We will now be identifying that using a tag called main. It's actually legal to use multiple main tags in one website, but I rather would suggest that you use just one main tag per page. Do we have any doubts until this point? Maybe we can take a bit of doubts so we can have that clarified before we move. Anybody? Any doubts? Okay, looks like there isn't anything. Okay, cool. We'll move.
Shashwat is asking about something that if you could share the favicon picture that you are using so that the person who is coding along with you can use the same.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah, I just saw the message. Yeah, sure, I can do that. Let me see. Do we have a provision to upload pictures here? I guess not. Okay. Okay, looks like I can't upload images in here, but okay. So Shashwat, let's play a little game here. So let's say I'm having the thumbs up icon, but I'll help you find a favicon of your own. Let's say you want a small airplane in your favicon. So just type the word airplane followed by favicon. Okay. And then try to go to a website that can give you SVG format. Okay. Pictures in SVG format. So when you go into that, let's say I would prefer to have this picture and just hit download. Either choose SVG over here or choose favicon itself. And when you choose favicon, choose the highest possible resolution, which is for the free of cost. We have 96 by 96. Just choose that. You can just hit download and then you can save it in the same file structure as I showed you. Does that help? Was that fine? Awesome. Cool. Let's continue. So coming on to CSS. Okay, this red color is a bit too strong on the eye, so let's take it down. We don't need that anymore. So selector and the block was started using curly braces. We'll come to the CSS later. Let's take care of the HTML part first. Now I was talking about the main tag. Main tag is the actual main content of your core content of your page. What is your page actually designed for? It's to do that purpose, right? Taking data from the user and then displaying it to the right-hand side as greetings. This is what the website is supposed to do. So that's what the main thing is, and then that's going to live inside the main tag that I have. Sorry. Yep. And inside that, I told you there are two sections. Okay, if I show you the output. So we just created the main part, which is everything that I've highlighted so far. And inside that, I told you we have two halves, where the first half is containing the form. The second half is containing the greetings. So let's have another div. And from this point on, we can start using the div tag within the main tag. So if we want two sections, I told you there's a left section and a right section. So what I'll do is I'll just create two div tags. Okay, so that's what my skeleton will do. With two div tags, now what I can do is I can design each one of those now. Okay, for the moment, since I've told nothing, I've just put the tag here down. In the output, you will not see anything, but then it is slowly behind the scenes, it is building that structure for you. Okay, it's just that you're not able to see it because the elements themselves don't have anything in them yet. you will be bloating that data inside these elements very shortly. So we created two sections, div1, div2. Okay. Now what we will do is we will use this attribute for the div tag called class. Okay. Again, so class is a particular div tag. Since you have multiple div tags, I told you that style.css will take in a selector here or an identifier. Okay. But we have a problem. There's only how many body can I use here? Let's say, so I wanted to apply the background red color to the body, entire body. So I simply told body and use these curly braces to specify the rules within. But I have multiple div tags, I have multiple main tags. That's an issue. A particular website will have only one body tag. But when I start talking about multiple tags that can exist in multiple numbers, like the div tag or the link tag, a link doesn't really apply any styles, but let's say the div tag. Div tag can update can be present multiple times. But what if I want to choose one particular div tag? That's where identifiers, these selectors called classes, sorry, classes and IDs come in. Okay, you can either choose to use the word class or ID equal to something inside the quotes that you built. Does this concept make sense? Can I see a quick thumbs up?
Sir, can you repeat why the classes and ID came?
Yeah, sure. The reason why we have classes and IDs is to select one particular instance of a tag that can be present multiple times in your website. For example, body will be used only one time in your website. So I don't need a class or an ID for that. But you can have multiple div tags, like the sections that we are creating here, left section and right section. They're using the same tag, that's the div tag, but there are the div tag is being used twice. So I want to choose one particular div tag and apply styles targeted to that. Was I clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to be giving the class name of section 1. Section 1 to the left-hand side section, and a class name of section 2 to the right-hand side section. Simple. Okay. So we are done with the basic structure. And then I'd like to also give the classes to our main tag here. Class is an attribute that can be used in most tags. Okay. Like rel and href, which is used for link. Class is one particular, like a universal attribute that can be used in most tags here. The div tag can take classes, the ID also. Okay, whatever I'm telling now will hold for the attribute ID also. But the difference between ID and class is that, okay, what if I want to group two things? Okay, what if I want these two div tags at one shot? I want to deliver one particular CSS effect to both of these things. In that way, for example, in one particular classroom, we call it a class because there are multiple people sitting there, and one teacher holds the session or the presentation for the entire class. So everybody's hearing it. But the class nearby will not hear it. That's what the word class means, okay, even in this context. But ID is specific for one particular student. If you see your ID card, you'll see one particular ID. And if you call that out in a PA system or an announcement system, you are the only person that will come. If you call the class 7A, the entire 7A class will come. If you call your particular ID number, it's only you that will come. It is exactly the concept here. And the word ID will be used uniquely in the thing. Okay. Let's say I named Sudai. There cannot be another element in this entire HTML sheet, HTML file with the same ID. It will actually work. If you try it out, it will work. But then it is highly suggested not to be exploited. That feature shouldn't be exploited. But class here, on the other hand, can have the same thing. I can call this section 1 again. See, section 1 is coming 2 times. That's no problem. Everything that I write in CSS for targeted to section 1, it will be delivered to both these div tags. But whatever I tell Sudai, the ID Sudai will be delivered to only this div. Got it? So let's proceed. Here I'm using class section 1. Instead of that, I'll call it would BG because that's the background that we'll be doing. And this main thing is the content that the website is going to host. Then comes section 1 and section 2. Now let's start filling things inside section 2, for instance. Section 2 here is a bit simple to start with. So let's start with section 2. It says greetings, only that for now. So if you go into section 2, let's open that tag up and let's write H2. H2 is another tag. H2 is basically, there are tags ranging from H1 to H6. H6 will have a standardized heading format, which is smaller in font size. H1 will have it the biggest in font size. Everything in between will be told by 2 to 5, H2 to H5. So I'll choose H2 for now, and I'll say the word greetings. Now is the first time that you'll see an actual output on your website. Come back to this, see the word greetings came. If I had used H1 instead of H2, look at this, it's a bit bigger now. If I used H6, then that's the smallest. It's very small, you can't even see it. Okay. So let's go with H2, which is like a democratic number, I guess. It's like an accepted size here. Let's go with H2. I think we have to speed up a little bit, so I'll take it up in a higher pace. So we are left with half an hour, right? Geetika, do we have a hard deadline at 7:30, or can we extend up to 7:40?
So then you can extend from 7:30, make it possible it is like closing at 7:45.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So let's start laying out the information for the next one. Here, the structure is going to be taking a div because I told you that the greetings app here, every information that you type is going to be hosted inside this, right? It's again its own element. Whatever I type here and hit submit, it's being nested here. It's creating cards in a list format. So that is again an element. Since it's a unique thing, I'm using the word ID here. And that is called, I'm going to give it the ID of greet responses. All right. Now let's quickly finish off the section 1 part, and then let's get to the styling. Section 1. So in section 1, I'm going to create another div tag. I'm going to give it the class of greet form.
Hello, sir. Can you change the H2 tag into italic format?
Into italics
If,
format.
yeah, if possible.
It is possible, yes. So how you do that is inside so tags are nested. It is possible to nest multiple tags within tags. So here what I've done is the div tag is hosting these two tags inside that. Similarly, H2 is another tag. There is a tag called the EM tag, okay, for emphasis. Italics is basically called emphasis here. So I'm just wrapping it inside that to get that effect. See, italics has come. Okay.
And for bold, if we want to change it to bold.
Like emphasis, there's another tag called strong, or you can use the word B, just the letter B. B is also used to make it bold. Okay, I'll hit save. Okay, the problem is that H2 already makes it bold. If you want to see a normal thing like H2, you can use the word span. Span will just give it like no style at all. And then the boldness that you see now is due to the B tag that you just entered within. Okay. See here, it's normal sized. But if I want to see the bold character, then I just use the B tag. You have it in bold. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. So yeah, greetings is done. Now let's come into greet form. Within greet form, I'm going to be creating the ribbon. You saw that brown color, maroon color ribbon, right? That header for that particular form. So I'm creating that as a div of its own. Second is the input field. inside the input field, so again, okay. So I'll tell you what the input field is. I'm having multiple input fields here. If you saw, an input field is the culmination of both these things. Yeah, the banner, your name, and the input box. So that makes one input field. So I have two of those things. So in my code, I'm just going to duplicate that line. Input field. And between each input field, I want a line break. I want a new line. So I'll use the BR tag. All right. And finally comes another BR tag followed by the submit button. Okay. So for that, we use the type attribute button. It might sound like a lot to remember initially, but don't be worried about that. As you start coding, all this will come in flow for you. So button type submit. I'm going to give it a class of submit button. And then it should read the words submit. Okay, done. And in the input field 1, the first input field, I'm going to put a h5 that says your name, a break, and an input of type text. Okay, input. This is the input box. So that's going to have a class of input box space name input. So the space here is to tell that this particular element is taking multiple classes. Okay, that's what it says. Let's say one particular student can belong to two classes, right? A person can belong to physics class and chemistry class. And that same notion is applied here by the space character here. One space character, and then you can tell other classes. You can keep chaining it on and on and on. All right. Moving forward, we can have this thing called placeholder. Placeholder is basically the thing that you saw within the input box. So I'll show you the output, how it looks now. See, it's already getting better. We've started at some place. We'll start styling it later. For the moment, let's just take care of the structure. Once the structure is done, then we'll take care of styling. So your name, this enter name, that's the placeholder. Sorry. Yeah. Moving on. Let's take care of the second input field here. Okay. It's just repetitions. So I have it ready with me already. Here it is. Your greeting message. Again, as a h5, a line break. And instead of a text field, I'm using a text input box. I'm using a text area element. Text area element basically gives you a box, a larger box of input field. Okay. That's what it is. So with that, basically our structure is done. This is all the structure that your website needs. Okay. Now the work that's remaining is to style all this, to make it look like this. Okay. Let's get started with the CSS part now. The body basically doesn't have anything. Any doubts so far? Yeah, we are actually taking a big step forward. Any doubts? I heard somebody unmuting.
Sir, can
Any
you
doubt?
please show the code?
Sorry?
Can you please show the code?
The code. Yeah, sure. Is that good? Don't worry, the code, I have access to I'll give you access to the code by the end of our tomorrow session. All right. All the code that we are typing here will be given to you tomorrow on GitHub. Right. Shall we proceed? Okay, let's get started. Again, please don't worry, the code will be given to you, so you can take your own time to understand what the code does. All right. So style.css, let's get to that. So first, I'll erase everything. I told you body here is a selector. You can use multiple selectors here. So first type of selector is the tag's name itself. If I say div, then every div tag on your page will obtain that style. If I say body, then there's only one body, but then that particular body tag will take the style that's told there. Now let's get to one extra thing. There is a selector called star. Star is basically a universal selector. It selects everything that's on your page. Okay, that's what it does. So I'm selecting everything on my page, and I'm going to be giving the attribute margin as 0. The syntax here is you tell what property you want to apply an effect for, a colon, then the value, ended by a semicolon. This is the syntax for CSS. So I'll tell you the story now. What happened was you chose everything on the particular page. You've opened a block using curly braces. You're telling I want margin to be set as 0 by default. Then I will start overriding it. Whatever margin I want, I'll start giving it slowly. So margin is set to 0. Padding. Padding is another property. I'm setting that to 0 for now. I'll tell you what it is. Then I'm going to tell I want a font family. Font family is what font is going to be used in the application that we are building now. So here we are using, I think it's something like Times New Roman or something, and I'm not a great fan of that. So I want to use a particular set of fonts that are available on most systems. The reason why you see many fonts here is because if one thing is not available on your system, it will fall back to the next one. If that is not available, it will fall back to the next one. If that is not available, it will fall to the next one, and it keeps going. That's why you have comma separated values. Okay. Now already our page will start looking beautiful because we have a good font here. See, your name, greetings, everything came in a better font this time. So are we clear? So I chose everything and gave it some default styles. Margin, padding, all that was done. Cool. And with the padding, I'd like to explain the difference between margin and padding first before we move on. I'll temporarily choose the button thing. Okay, we have only one button, which is that submit button that you saw there. I'll just zoom in temporarily so I can show it to you. The submit button is here. Okay, I'll tell you what the margin thing does first. Sorry. So margin will take a number followed by pixels. Pixels is the unit that will be used in CSS mostly. There are so many other units like the VH or the VW or the FR or the percentage. All these are various units that are available for use in CSS. Okay, pixel is the most used one. Like we have centimeters, meters, millimeters, etc. in the real physics life. In CSS, we use these units called pixels or percentages or VH, FR, VW, etc. Okay, but the most important thing that you should know for now is PX, pixels. So if I say margin 10 pixels, it means everything around the button will be 10 pixels. Okay. When I say everything around the thing, because you see, I hope you notice the difference. When I'm just commenting it out so as to remove that effect. If you see it now, if you can see, submit is like sticking to the left. It doesn't have any space from the left. But after I gave it the margin 10 pixels, it came a bit to the right and the greetings also went down. So here, 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 and here, it gave itself 10 pixels of breathing room. That's what the word margin does. Now what the word padding does is, let's say 20 pixels. Margin is like you construct, let's say you're constructing a house, you'll be building a compound. Margin is like your compound, the space outside your compound. How far is your compound from your neighbor's compound? That is what margin does. What padding does is the inner boundary. What is the space between the boundary of your house, the last brick of your house, to your compound? That is what padding is. You'll see the difference now. If I say 20 pixels, look at what happened to the submit button. Did I make sense here? Can I have a quick thumbs up if that was understandable? The difference between margin and padding.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. So the boundary that I was talking to you about, the compound, is that border of the button. 10 pixel margin was given to tell the outer boundary. 20 pixels padding was given inside the boundary between the start of your house and your compound. All right, so that's the difference between padding and margin. Now let's go back to normal. The next thing is, let's start styling the wood BG, the wooden background that we had. Now I'm going to be so the star was used to select everything on the page. Now I'm going to select not a tag, instead a class. I can either choose the word div itself, but if I choose the word div, it will select every div and then put that effect over there. But I wanted to use only this div and then give a particular effect. So since I used the word class, I'm going to use the dot selector. Okay, dot is used to mention class names. So dot followed by your class name, simple. Okay, class means dot, universal means star, and then the normal tag mechanism. You can use the tag's name itself. Are we good? So the dot is used to tell which class it has to identify. Right. So we chose the wood BG thing. If I have to show you which one it is line number 11. That wooden background. Okay. I will choose wood BG and I will first tell. So wood BG basically doesn't have anything around. Okay. I'll first show you what wood BG is. So while debugging, like you are programmers basically, and then programmers will have to debug. For debugging in HTML, what we basically do is we put a dummy character first. Okay, I'll just put the word letter yes, or it can be a small, a very small phrase like SSSS or something, some dummy string over there. Once you put something like that, it will start showing up on your page. So this SSSS is what the div is. The element button has boundaries by default, but your things here don't have a boundary. So you need to give it boundaries. You want to see how it looks on your page. For that, use the background color property for debugging. Okay, choose like a medium, or you can use some pleasant color. You can use brown. Okay, some pleasant color, so it will like obviously show on your page. This is the space held by that particular div tag. All right, that's how you debug it. And from here, I can start playing around with the margins. 100 pixels, if I say, that can be one thing. See, it gave itself 100 pixels. If I want to give it padding, then you can give it padding. That's how you debug. Okay, I'm making it very clear with the debugging because what makes a good programmer is their debugging skills. So for seeing that, it's like a workaround basically. It's not a professional debugging suggestion that I'm giving. It's like a workaround. It's like a small hack that I'm teaching you here. So we gave it background color to make it look obviously, and then the padding or whatever you want to debug and play around with. So I'll give it brown for now. I'll stick with that. I will give it the property of min height. And I'll use instead of 100 pixels, I'm going to use VH. VH here means your VH actually expands to vertical, like viewport height. Okay. Viewport is basically your screen, nothing else. Viewport might sound like a fancy word, but viewport means your screen. So what it just did is that it gave a min height. Min height means the least affordable height. Minimum, at least I want this height. That's what min height is here to tell. I said min height 100 VH. That means I want 100% of my screen to be covered just by this particular element, SSSS. That's what I did. I told it that. So min height of 100 VH, followed by, I'm going to give it this thing called background image. I use background color first for debugging, but now I'm going to use the background image to tell what effect I want to, what background image I'm going to be using. For that background image, followed by this function called URL, and I'll tell where the background is. There we used href, here we use URL. That's it. BG JPG will take the background color down because we now have an image there to see. Awesome. Can you see it now? It's already starting to look cool. Okay. So that is done. The background just came in. If you did not give this min height thingy, the min height property, then it will just take whatever it needs. It just took the enough amount of space to accommodate the SSSS. But that's not what I want. A background is supposed to fill the entire page. So I told, take a minimum height of 100% of your screen. I told it that. Followed by this, what we are going to do is that we had a blurred effect. Did you see that? Here our background is a bit blurry. That's what we want here. For that, you need to use, so I'll just paste a bunch of code. Okay. Yeah, that's what it does. I'm first adding the blur effect, okay, using these two properties, WebKit filter, blur of 7 pixels, or filter blur of 7 pixels. The reason why there are two flavors of the same property is because each browser sees it as a different property. The filter property might work only on browsers like Safari, Chrome, Opera, Edge, and all that. But there are these older browsers, right? Internet Explorer and all that. For that, you need to use this syntax, the same keyword, but followed, just prefixed with hyphen WebKit hyphen. That's why you have two flavors. Whichever is acceptable by your browser, it will take that. The next thing that I did is that I want to center my image, the background image. So I said background position center and background repeat, no repeat. Background repeat is here to tell the fact that it shouldn't repeat. If let's say you're filling in too much information beyond that 100% height. Okay, like Wikipedia allows you to scroll their page, right? Because there's so much information Wikipedia wants to give you. In such a case, I don't want the background to repeat itself. Because background, if it's exceeding the background, what the background will try to do is that it will repeat itself just to make another, it will attach another tile and then it will try to apply the background effect to the entire content that you've given. But I'm telling, don't do that. Just come once and that is enough. So I said background repeat, no repeat. Are we good? That's it. That's your output. See, so it's already starting to get, okay. We have a few. Do we have any doubts? Okay, cool. We have thumbs ups coming in.
Sir,
Awesome.
can you please tell again how you add blur?
The image, the background image.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so the background image, I first chose that particular div element with class wood-bg. I selected it using the dot selector, dot wood-bg. I opened a CSS block. I used the property called background-image with the URL function. And then inside that, I gave a string telling take that image from assets/bg.jpg.
Means sir, you are created already assets folder. In asset folder, you have your images,
Yeah,
right?
I have two images. Correct. I created that already.
Okay.
I put the images I wanted there, favicon and then the background. Okay. Then I told give it a blur effect. Then I told center yourself. I want the image to be centered. It shouldn't be skewed. It shouldn't be positioned in an odd fashion. All right. Let's get going. Next, let's start styling the content. Okay, content is basically the core, the main tag that we wrote, right? So content is going to get styled now. Let's give it a padding of. So padding, basically, let's again get back to the button example. I'd like to show you something else. In the button, I first gave just padding 20 pixels. So what it did was, hi, I'm back. I just broke for a second. I'm sorry. Cool. Is my screen visible? I'd like to hear a yes.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Cool. Let's continue. Yeah, okay. So I wanted to show you the buttons case. So when I told 20 pixels, what happened was everything around, there are 4 directions to this thing, and all the 4 directions took 20 pixels. But what if I want to give it different values? I want up and down to take just 10 pixels, and left and right should take 20 pixels. If I want to do that, I'll use the same property, but it has a different flavor to it, okay? A different style to it, where you can break it into 2 parts. This means the first value will be taken for up and down. Second value will be taken for left and right. Okay. Now if I save it and take you back, see, left and right has just 10 pixels, but up and down have 20 pixels. With that understanding, moving forward, I would like you to see what we do to content. For content, I'd like to give it 50 pixels up and down, 80 pixels left and right. Okay. That is done. Now I'd like to do one thing which might be a bit complex to understand, but you will understand it in no time. It's called display. It's called the property of display, because I want the content has section 1 and 2 that has to get displayed left and right, okay, side by side. So I'm going to call the display grid property, and then in that I'm going to give, again, like the previous thing that we previous background picture, we are giving a min height here of 100% because I want the entire page to see the content also. It should see the background and my content. And then I'm going to give it a position of absolute. I'll tell you what all this means in a short while. A width of 100%. I want the entire stretch to be my content. Finally, this is the most important thing. Grid template columns. Here I'm going to give 2 values, 1 FR, 1 FR. Okay. Now I'll explain it to you. So if you see it here, we have 2 sections in our content, section 1 and section 2. Section 1, section 2, I gave it, so for the content, the parent of section 1 and 2, I gave it a display of grid. With that, I gave it another property, a similar property named after grid called grid template columns, and I gave it 2 values, 1 FR and 1 FR. FR is another unit like PX or percentage or whatsoever, or the more similarly named units in CSS. FR is a unit that implies fractional units. Okay, fractional units means if I tell 1 FR, 1 FR, it's like 1:1 ratio. Okay, if I put another 1 FR here, then it means I'm telling give me 3 columns, everything at 1:1:1 ratio. Okay, if I give it 1 FR just 2 times, then it means whatever you have inside yourself, inside the content, I want you to split it across 2 columns of equal width, which is 1 fraction, 1 fraction. They'll take half the screen. So if you can see it, see, that has already happened. The form went to the left, the greetings part went to the right. Section 1 took the left, which is the first FR. Second FR is taken by the greetings. Got it? But the issue is that it's all coming below the background that we had. Okay. Now that needs to be taken care of by the position attribute, position property in CSS. How do you do that? I gave it position absolute here, right? Similarly, my wood BG also needs to have the same property, position absolute. It is just to imply that I want to see the picture behind the picture and the main content in one layer, like layered over other. It's like putting 2 chart papers, one below the other, instead of decking them side by side. Okay. But there's one problem here. The background just disappeared. If you noticed, it came up. The content that we have somehow climbed upstairs and came to the top part, but the background is now missing. Okay, so we need to fix that. How do we do that? We have to set something called the z-index value. Z-index is like the z-axis. So you in 3D you have 3 axes, right? X-axis, y-axis, and z-axis. If I call z-index as -1, I'm telling, I told you there are 2 chart papers, right? I'd actually like to come on camera to display, explain you this, because we are talking about a different dimension now, this third axis. I hope I'm visible now. So quickly, I want to talk about z-index. Z-index is like I told you, you're laying 2 chart papers over each other. Let's say this is the background for the moment, and this is the content. If I say z-index -1 for the content, then it means I'm putting that chart paper below the first chart paper. If I tell it, if I give it a positive number, that means it's coming above. That's the difference. Okay, it's the z-axis. Back to the code. Okay. So we gave it z-index -1. And then we have to give it other properties here, like the top, left, right, to give it that effect. Okay. So what we just did is, it might be a bit confusing, but you'll get it over time. Okay, it's just a bit of practice that you need, nothing else. So if you saw, I gave to the background, I told the top has to be at 0. The top has to stick to the topmost part of your window. I told that using the words top and 0. With right and left, I told the right hand side has to stick to the extreme right of your screen, and the left margin has to stick to the extreme right of the screen. To explain this better, I'll just change the values and show you. If I call it 90 pixels, for instance, if I say left at 90 pixels, see the entire background moved to the right by 90 pixels. This thing is 90 pixels now because your left margin is at 90 pixels from the screen. But that's not what I want. I want it to be at 0 pixels from screen. I want it to be at the screen itself. So I'll just say 0. Okay. It came back to the normal position. Any doubts so far? Can I see some thumbs up if we are all in sync? Awesome. Cool. We can close it soon. Okay, just bear with me. We'll be able to finish it with a proper progress today. So next, let's start coding the first section, okay? Which is section 1. Again, it's a class, so I'm calling it using the class selector, the dot selector. Now I'm going to give it, like the display grid that you saw there, I'm giving this thing called a display property called flex. Okay, these are separate concepts of their own. I highly suggest that, like, I'll teach you the basics. Like, we are teaching basics already. But what I want you to do is, after the class, probably you can go and just go onto YouTube and then explore what display grid is, what display flex is. Just these two things. That will help you gain a better understanding of what it is. Okay, because we can't really stack so many things into the 1.5 hour window that we have, right? So that's the case. So with display flex, I'm going to mention 2 things called align items and justify content. These 2 things just say that inside section 1, whatever is present, align items means it has to vertically come to the center. Justify content means it also has to come to the center horizontally. 38th line says, I want x-axis to be at center. Sorry, y-axis. Everything. It should come to a vertical center. So y-axis should come to a center. And the justify content says everything on the x-axis should come to the center. Simple. See, that's what happened. Everything on the x-axis came to the center. On the y-axis also it came to the center. So section 1 is done. We'll go to the greet form within section 1. Inside the greet form thing, I would like to tell, I want a font size first. It's too small of a font size, right? So I want to give it font size 18 pixels. I want to give it a background color of white. I want to give it, again, a display. I want to center everything again. Okay, so I'll say display flex. There's a small change. There's another property called flex direction. Okay, flex direction of column. So by default, what happens is flex will put everything. If I don't say flex direction column, it will change everything. It will put everything in one row. That's one small drawback. That's not what I want. By default, it just says flex direction as row, but I want to say that everything, okay, now you are in the flex display property. I want you to come in a column fashion instead of a row fashion. Instead of horizontally tacking up to one another, I want them to be seen one below the other. So I just say flex direction column. Everything came in one column. Okay, now let's give it some stylings. How do we style it? Let's give it a width first. Let's give it 400 pixels width. And let's give it some padding just on the bottom. If I want to give something just to the bottom, you have a variant of the particular property, which is padding bottom. So padding bottom of 20 pixels. Sounds good. So everything below submit has 20 pixels there. Okay. Now, if you saw the output here, the form has a border, right? And the border is curved. Okay, I can show you in a bit of a zoom. See, the border here is zoomed. So I will apply that using, but here we have sharp borders. So we need to take care of that. How do we take care of that? You guessed it. It is border radius. Okay, I'm giving it a border radius of 20 pixels. See, everything has a 20 pixel radius now. If 20 sounds like a lot, you can set it at 10 pixels. It's a smaller radius, smaller curvature. We had the heading ribbon, right? I'll just paste the code. Okay. Heading ribbon, again, I'm giving it a min height of 30 pixels, a background color of something. I can just pick something from here, from the color palette, whatever I wish looks good. I can bring it here. And the border radius. We have 4 values here because we have 4 corners in a particular rectangular structure. So I'm telling the top left has to have 20 pixels, top right should have 20 pixels. Both the bottom things should have 0. If I can see that. Okay, looks like it's not loading up. Okay, let's get back to it. We just style the input field and just the H5 inside the input field. For that, I gave it a font weight. Font weight is to control how bold your characters look. That ranges from values starting at 100 and then it goes up to 900. 900 being the boldest, 100 being the thinnest. Okay. The input fields have, again, the same property of padding, the same width of 360 pixels given, and another property. Since it's inside Flex, once you see the video about Flex, you'll understand what this is. Align self center. I want it to be at the center. That's all that it means. See, it started to look beautiful now. Okay. Am I going too fast? Is that understandable? The flex part will go over your head for the moment, but that's fine. That's completely acceptable. Just understand the intention of it. Just understand what it's trying to do. And then you can see it over YouTube, okay? Everything should be fine. It's best if you understand like 80% of today's session. I mean, 70% of today's session, if you understand, it's highly appreciable. Right. Let's continue with the input box. Okay, input field is the entire field, as I told you, with the banner. Input box is just the input box. We are giving it a min width of 320 pixels and a padding of 5 pixels, just to make it look a bit more huge. All right, we are about to close. We are about to come to an end. We are about to finish styling. Once we are done, you are good to go. Let's now style the submit button. Okay, the submit button needs to have a width of 80%. It needs to be centered. So I'm calling it align centered. Align self. It needs to have a padding. Up and down, it needs 6 pixels, and left, right, it doesn't need anything. So 0 pixels. It doesn't need a background at all. So I'll just say background none. I'd like to give it some border. Okay. Instead of border radius, now I'm giving it border, which is of 2 pixels thickness. It's going to be a solid border of color orange. That's it. See, there it is. Your submit button looks beautiful now. Okay. But in the output, you saw this, didn't you? When I put my mouse over the submit button, it has that transition to it. It has the cool effect. But in the app that we have now, it doesn't have that. Okay. So we are now going to give it that effect. So it's a very simple thing. It's called a pseudo class. Okay. I'm going to select the same submit button, but now I'm going to tack on a colon followed by hover. This is to tell to the dot submit button class, when I hover over it, when I put my mouse over it, how it should look like. That's what that means. So what has to change now? It has to get a background color of orange. It has to get a cursor of pointer. When your mouse has to change, it has to show that finger, index finger up thing, a pointer symbol. And then the font color has to become white when I put the mouse over it. Now see what happened? You got that effect. But it's more like a switching action. Here, it's like a smooth, fluid transition. But if you see ours, it's a switching action. So we need to give it a smoothness. How do we do that? We need to give it some transition. For that, you have the transition property. The transition property will first take an argument of the time. How much time do you want the transition to persist? And that should do it. See, we got it smooth. If you give the same line, the same transition line to the normal behavior, which is without the hover, then even if you take the mouse out, it will do that same, that smooth action, easing into the state that you've told it to go into. Okay, that's it. Now we've come to the section 2 part, where we are going to be styling greeting cards. So for greeting cards, I would like to. So we need to see something there, right? For a greeting card to be seen, we need to have something visible there. Okay. So give me just 1 second, so I can show you something that can be styled. We can have something that will appear being styled. Yep. Cool. Okay, that's a particular card that I've given. Okay, for the moment it just looks like that. ASDD, ASDAD, something like that. But now let's start styling it. Okay, I'll put a comment here saying greeting cards. Okay, we'll finish it off in 5 minutes. Just hold on. Section 2. Section 1 has been styled already. Section 2 is now chosen. I wanted to have a padding of 40 pixels. Now is a new concept. So what this means is that there's a space here. There in the class nomenclature, when you had a space, it meant I'm giving multiple classes. But here, if there's a space, it means every H2 inside of section 2. That's what it means. Okay. Can I have it? See, the H2 got styled now. It came to the center as you told, but it's the H2 that's present inside this section 2 alone here. Okay, that's what that means. Okay. Finally, we are going to talk about greet responses. Okay. Now, instead of, here's the last concept for the day. The dot selector was used to identify classes. The hash selector is used to identify IDs. If you saw here, I gave it an ID instead of class. This div has an ID of greet responses. So I'm using a hash to select that. That's the only difference you should learn today. Nothing else. Got it? Don't worry about what I've written here. You'll get that when you understand Flex. Okay, so don't stress out about just this part. Greet responses, I'm just giving it display flex. Again, I'm ordering it in column wise. Then I'm giving it a gap of 20 pixels because in the output you saw, right? This gap here, this is 20 pixels. You can also give margin bottom if you want, or you can use gap. Finally, we have that card, right? The dark themed card. That needs some styling too. So how do you do that? That card will have a class of card with the background color of a color that I have chosen here. You can choose to have any color. You can have red, blue, orange, yellow, whatever. It's going to have a padding of 20 pixels. It's going to have a display of flex. I'm using flex way too many times because it's that advantageous. Once you understand the concept, you'll be like masters of flex. It needs a border radius of 10 pixels. It has to center everything in the in the x-axis, justify content center. It needs to have a gap of 2 pixels because you're displaying two things, right? You're displaying your name and the greeting that you put. So 2 pixels gap, flex direction column. Done. You go back to it. See this? It looks much better now. All right. Finally, let's just style these two and we will close for the day. Now, how do? We are going to be using that syntax that I was talking to you earlier about, the space syntax. So inside the card, I'm going to take the name, the greet name. All right. Inside the card. So if you saw the example that I put here, I created, so what's going to happen is that with JavaScript tomorrow, we are going to be looping it like this. Okay. You will see multiple cards like that. When you put multiple cards, that's why I'm using a class here. I want to target if I use ID, then I have to find what ID each card has. But if I use a class, I can in one shot target all the cards and then give it a set style. That's exactly what has happened now. I gave it all a class of card. Inside that, I gave it two divs. The first div is greet name class. Second div is greet message class. We will give it specific colors now. So I'm choosing the greet name, what your name is. For that, I'm giving a color of like a greenish color. Okay. I'm giving it a text transformation. Okay, text transformation. It's a new property. It will just capitalize whatever name you type. It will capitalize everything, no matter what character, what casing you used. And I'm going to use a letter spacing of 5 pixels, which means between every letter, how much space do I want? I'm going to give it margin bottom of 10 pixels. Finally, a font weight. That is how bold it should look. I'll give it a normal font weight, 700. 700 looks decent to me. All that is trial and error. You will have to experiment and then find out what looks best to you. I find that 700 looks good to me. Sorry, it's not capitalized, it's uppercase. I want to make everything as uppercase. So it looks uppercase here. Cool. Finally, the greet message. Yep, the greet message, very similar effects. Okay, I'm having like a grayish, like a beige color with a margin bottom of 10 pixels. I'm giving it a thinner style now. Just 500 font weight. The width will be 70%. It's going to get aligned to the center and a line height of 1.5. That means if you're typing multiple lines in your app, here it looks fine, but let's say I'm typing just a bunch of things here. Okay. When I do that, it needs to, when you type things that are coming across, if it gets broken into the next line, then it has to have a gap between those lines. And that is controlled using the line height of 1.5. It just says, I want so much height in between the lines that I have. All right. So we can close here for today and we can continue from this point tomorrow. Okay. Do we have any doubts here for the day? Whatever we've done so far. We can revisit that particular part of code and maybe, we can take 2 or 3 minutes to close it with any more questions.
Sir, that line part in which that we are typing and the letter is going outside the box,
Yes.
how to fix that?
Yeah, this part, right? The overflow.
Yes, sir.
That's what you're asking. Yeah, we can control that using a max width property. Okay. Give me one moment. So it's like browser specific. Yeah, okay. We got it. See, the max width property is what will do that for you. Previously, that happened because I did not set the max width as 70%. But here what I did was the greeting message I told of the gray area, don't take more than 70% of it. If it goes beyond that 70%, it will come into the next line. Okay, that's exactly what happened now. And you can see the gap between these two lines, right? That is not normal. I gave it 1.5. So it's a bit spaced apart to give it that breathable look. Did you understand?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Any more doubts? Anybody? Any more doubts?
No, sir.
No.
Okay.